None of us can ever measure the pain of those who have lost so much, suffered so much, and will do so for so many years to come. But if we are to ever understand the magnitude of devastation that is the drunk driver, we must listen to the victims and never forget. I'm Bill McKay, News Center 8, Cleveland. The driver who drinks, the drink who drives, it is what we face this day. We must remember and be aware that each year thousands are killed, hundreds of thousands are injured. We must remember what it really means.
There was blood all over his face and his mouth. There was blood on his pillow. I thought he must have an injury to the back of his head.
Her husband was driving home from work. His car was smashed by a drunk driver. He did survive, but he and his family still suffer.
And a lot of times head injury patients change their personalities. And he had a personality change. He had a terrible temper that would flare. And the children were frightened. My 5-year-old was scared to hold his daddy's hand or get up on his daddy's lap because he didn't know for sure that daddy wasn't going to get mad.
So we search and question, what can be done? Is there an answer for our new awareness? For one thing, it was a tough, growing, angry awareness that was the springboard for a new law that goes into effect next month here in Ohio.
The most important single facet of the new legislation is the 0.10 blood alcohol concentration level that in the old law was presumptive of alcoholic influence is now per se indication that a person is under the influence of alcohol, and at 0.10 or above, a person is guilty of driving under the influence of alcohol.
Secondarily, in the past, this could be negotiated or mitigated. Now it cannot.
According to the letter of the law, it cannot be negotiated or mitigated.
Still, there are others who will tell you that we already have enough law on the books. What we need in Ohio is something else.
We need judges who are going to stand firm and indicate to people who are convicted, you're going to be punished. 6 months in jail, a 3-year license suspension of one's privileges, totally without ability to drive anywhere, and a $1,000 fine.
Yet with all the punishments, the rehabilitation programs, where do we stand today, this moment? We stand, it would seem, with our strongest weapon to fight the drunk driver, awareness, to listen and to learn from what we hear, because we cannot look away any longer.
My son was killed by a drunk driver.
They were struck by a bolt of lightning who happened to be a person in an automobile.
God, don't let him die. I just didn't know what would happen, and I didn't want God to let him die.
This report is being done because a mother who lives in that house and who lost her youngest son refuses to forget and refuses to accept that there are no reasons why her young son died. The story begins October 1981.
I honestly feel that somebody has murdered these children. I can't prove how, but I know they did not die natural causes.
Her son was found dead in a gully 4 days after being reported missing. Cause of death still undetermined. Mrs. Silva believes somehow his death is linked with at least 3 others.
I have that very deep feeling because of the fact they all knew each other, all the circumstances with the wearing apparel being missing, finding them face up.
And what of the others? What of the similarities? On the 3rd of December 1981, 20-year-old Craig Franco was shot to death while on duty at a Ohio station. He and his brothers knew Kurt Silva. They went the same places, knew the same people, lived only blocks from each other. The 2nd of February 1982, just a month later, Eugene Cavett would plunge to his death from a trestle near a landfill. He was a close friend of Sova's. He was found lying face up, a boot and sock missing. Then on the morning of February 21st, just 19 days later, 20-year-old Lisa Combs, whose brothers knew Franco and Sova, would leave this bar. She lived at East 57th and Harvard. Within minutes or a few hours, she would be dead. Her body found off a dirt road in Geauga County, Bainbridge Township. She had been stabbed, raped, and strangled. Clothing as well as her shoes were missing. She was lying face up in a ditch. All had died in just 4 months. 2 are clear homicide. 1 a question. The other has been ruled accidental. 4 young people dead from the same neighborhood who knew one another. Is all this just a coincidence? More about that in my next report. I'm Bill McKay, News Center 8 Cleveland. One thing is very certain. 4 young people from the same neighborhood are dead. 3 died violently, 1 very mysteriously. But the cold fact is, they all died within 4 short months.
I honestly feel that somebody has murdered these children.
Is it mere coincidence that Eugene Cavett, who swam in this pool with Kurt Sova, Craig Franco, and perhaps the brothers of Lisa Combs, and who had crossed the trestle over Mill Creek hundreds of times, would slip and fall 200 feet to his death? Is it mere coincidence that Franco knew Kurt Sova, and that Franco was on the phone with this girl, an employee at a neighborhood service station, the night he, Franco, was shot to death? And is it mere coincidence that a fellow employee of hers was with Kurt Sova the night he, Sova, disappeared? Is it not strange that one victim was shot, another strangled, another crushed by a fall, but the cause of death of the very first to die is still a mystery?
Probable accidental and instantaneous body death is what they put on his death certificate, on his autopsy, and what we were told at the coroner's office.
Is it mere coincidence that 3 of the victims would be found lying on their backs face up, arms stretched out, 1 or both of their shoes missing, never found? These and other circumstances and similarities, for the first time, were brought in total by us to the attention of all 3 police departments involved.
We should get together with Cleveland Homicide and also Bainbridge, compare notes and see and go from there.
I assure you that we will be talking to them in the near future.
We have to begin backtracking now and checking on the information that you've supplied to us.
The fact is, someone knows something about the deaths of 4 young people from the same neighborhood, and that person or persons with the guaranteed protection of identity is now urged to come forward. I'm Bill McKay, News Center 8 Cleveland.
Now only 20 teams remain alive on the road to Columbus. For most of the teams in our area, the season has ended. We'd like to take time out now to say a special farewell to the seniors who have closed out their high school careers and the lessons that they have learned.
This weekend, I went to a football game, which was not big time except to the people in the communities involved. This was my son's last game as a high school football player. Now, I'm not sure if he will play any more football after this. Whether he is good enough to play in college remains to be seen. I happen to think he's a pretty good football player. But I hope he knows this, and I hope a lot of other sons know this about their fathers. I hope all the victories have been for his team and himself. I have seen the hours, the days, and the weeks, and the months that he has put in, trying to learn how to play the game to the best of his ability. This doesn't make him any different than thousands of other young men in this country who play football on their high school teams. Their record doesn't matter. I know he has been through a worthwhile experience. He has played for a coach who has been tough and fair and knows the game. He has learned about success and failure. He has learned that there are those who are quick to criticize, and he has learned something about praise, too. He has learned about getting knocked down on one play and then getting up and trying just as hard on the next one. He has learned something about life. I've seen some of the greats like Jim Brown and Bart Starr. My son might never be one of these, but none of them could ever make me feel as proud as this young man did this season.
A recent marketing campaign told women, "You've come a long way, baby," and certainly many women have. But many more have become victims of social and economic pressures that have left them as sad spectators in the joys of living. Tonight, News Center 8's Bill McKay takes us into the world of the new minority, single women, to be seen each night at 6 on News Center 8. Next, part 1 of A Woman Alone.
I can get along with people. I always have.
When you see a woman with a fur coat or a great job, sitting in a beautiful restaurant, swimming on the beaches of Hawaii, what do you think?
I think I wished it was me sometime. But in my life, that it'll never happen.
It is the American dream. It is the way the storybooks tell women life should be. Since childhood, for most women, it is understood, expected. These are not the women alone. These are not the hundreds of thousands who have become part of the woodwork of our society. They are not the homeless. They have never been.
I don't know. I've never been in that position. I don't know. Is there a county welfare department? I don't know where it goes.
These are the women this story is about. They are the women alone, the homeless, society's new minority. The government estimates that of the millions who are homeless today, that is with no permanent address, 40% are single women, either with or without children. It is their plight that we are concerned.
I was outside, 5 days last week when it was 20 below. When I got to the mission, my feet I almost lost 2 toes.
They don't really see how hard it is out there to be out there on your own and alone in the world. It's pretty hard.
At every turn, there is a total, incomprehensible reckoning of being in that position in life. In our next reports, we will learn how they came to be there, how they find themselves in a tunnel with no light at the end, and what might be an answer. I'm Bill McKay, News Center 8, Cleveland.
Of homeless, wandering women. Tonight in his series, Women Alone, the New Minority, News Center 8's Bill McKay reports that in Cleveland alone, the number of homeless people reaches 10,000, and of that number, over 3,000 are women, battered and abused.
She's a different kind of lady. She's not often understood.
Yeah, one of the rapists had a brick. Kept hitting me in the head with it.
The fears of the woman battered, forgotten, alone are real. But there it is. It does happen.
I don't know what's going on. I'm just afraid of what might happen. And I don't know. I'm scared to death right now.
The reasons they find themselves alone are many, much based on today's economy. Husbands gone, jobs gone, government assistance gone, low-income housing gone. Where once they stood on the fringe, they now stand alone.
I have nowhere to go.
You know, I refuse to beg anyone for anything. All I ask is for someone to help me help myself, help me help my children, you know. That's the main thing.
Like the child on the merry-go-round, they become gypsies circling the outskirts. They become stablemates in a shelter house for women. In our next report, we learn more about that. I'm Bill McKay, News Center 8, Cleveland.
Estimated that more than 2 million people are without homes in this country.
Tonight in the third part of Women Alone, the New Minority, News Center 8's Bill McKay reports that for the hundreds of homeless women in Cleveland, it's a struggle that seems never-ending.
Like being in a war. Just like being in a war.
They have come to the West Side Catholic Shelter. It is the only place left to go. They will stay a day, maybe 5, then they will leave. Most will have nowhere else to go. Most are bitter.
They walk around the world. They don't know where to start first. They go to one place, they say you have experience. You're too old.
We had first met Lillian when she was a live-in maid. 2 days later, she was homeless again. She had been attacked by the landlord.
It was dark, and I was afraid to leave. I was afraid to get out. And I like stayed awake almost half of the night. I'm talking about getting out on that street. I'm scared to death of walking anymore. I have to hold my breath anywhere I go until I get to where I'm going. And that's an awful feeling.
The woman stands the whole sexual harassment that is not her choice. And that's her constant fear. And it's her constant compromise to get a roof over her head. You know, that's, I call it jokingly, but sadly I call it, you know, body rent. But that's what it is.
So they drift from one shelter to another, from one empty hope that leads to more depression, to more rejection. They walk the maze that is the system. In our next report, we learn just where that journey takes the homeless woman alone, the new minority. I'm Bill McKay, News Center 8, Cleveland.
Third part of a series, Women Alone, the New Minority. News Center 8's Bill McKay reports that because the homeless woman lives without an address, she's unable to receive welfare checks or food stamps, she's invisible in our structured society.
For the woman homeless and alone, surely there is a starting place. Surely a small gift from others that will touch them. Surely they understand they need only a little push to begin again.
I always let my clients know that you're going to be on a very, very limited income. And in arranging for some place for them to live, it's very difficult. It's almost impossible. I don't know any place where you can rent for $100 a month anymore.
The solution seems all so near, yet for the homeless woman alone, it is miles from something touchable.
We really are not geared and never were designed to serve as a social service agency and shelter people on emergency and quickly within a day or two.
Yes, there are units available, but they are badly in need of repair. Surely, we have been told and believe, when there is a true need, that those in power, our system people, will be there.
There are all kinds of women from all walks of life, both sides of town, all races. Basically, we're an information and referral service, and we have about 500 different resources on file. Some of them are shelters, some of them are individual people.
Being alone, homeless, the pain of that becomes the law of their lives. It is something to be obeyed and followed. Listen to those who know.
The single woman is even in worse condition, if you can imagine that, meaning that in many instances, if she has a 1- or 2-room apartment, The maximum amount of money that she's going to receive a month is $114.
These women, 3,000 more every year in Cleveland, 300,000 each year in the country, are not, as some might liken, weeds growing in the earth's clay. They too would become a flower, but because of today's demand, they are now deprived the necessary sun and rain and soft winds that make the daisy white. In this town, there are those who want to change all that. Tomorrow, we will meet them. I'm Bill McKay, News Center 8, Cleveland.
Right, as we continue our special series, Women Alone, the New Minority, News Center 8's Bill McKay reports that if the economic recovery is underway, it hasn't reached the new poor.
I think there's a job out there with my name on it, okay, that I could do really well. It's just I don't know how marketable my skills are. That was one of the reasons for coming here.
Emma is talking about the classes held at the Women's Network office in Akron, a place where women are brought back into society after they have suffered the first stage of homelessness and being alone.
The program helps them to gain the self-esteem that they need to take charge of their lives, helps them to learn goal setting. We show them what the job market looks like in 1984. We teach them how to write a resume, how to write a cover letter.
Number 3, action, celebrate, it's done. I can say that I made it. All right. And I'll go pig out.
That is a part of the picture that we want to see, to know that does exist. Yet we know that the majority of chapters in the story is this: the hundreds in this city who find another short-term house, who become part of the drifting fog that is the homeless woman, who are the ranks of today's new minority.
Women who just somehow everything goes wrong in their lives, and so they end up out on the street. They don't have a job, or they've lost a job.
You know, it is so very true. They are still another forgotten class of people in our society. They are the new minority. But there is one woman in this town who wants to go beyond, do something more for them. She is a nun. Her name is Sister Loretta Schulte. Her plan begins right here.
Right now, we're very serious about trying to obtain a building where women from shelters can get low-income housing from us, so that they have at least they have a longer period of time to figure out what they're going to do for themselves or what they can do.
The problem of homeless women centers not in this city alone. It reaches across the land and to the nation's capital. I'm Bill McKay, News Center 8, Cleveland.
In his final report, Women Alone, the New Minority, News Center 8's Bill McKay tells us there is something being done to help in Cleveland and in the nation's capital to make life easier for the woman alone.
Then in the street you meet people that are too nice. When people say it's your fault, that everything that happened to you is your fault, you brought it all on yourself, I don't like people saying that.
They are the thoughts and feelings of only one of the thousands of homeless women throughout the greater Cleveland area. She is but one of the growing number that reaches across our country, that reaches to the nation's capital. Washington, D.C. is the showplace of monuments, but chances are you've never seen this one. One might think that the center of the nation's power makers would be a showplace of correction, a catalyst. But in Washington, D.C., there exist thousands of homeless women, and they too reflect every walk of life.
I think it's a responsibility of human beings, whatever segment they fall into, private or government sector of our society, that it cannot be done solely by either side. The two sides have to come together to find a resolution to the problem.
Ironically, here in Washington, D.C., a town where things are known to not always work, it appears that Congress is now beginning to take the steps to help solve the problem.
Well, it's not an empty promise. January of a year ago, if someone would have said the federal government is going to provide $100 million, people would have laughed.
One more time, Jerry. You are probably as close to this problem of homeless women, women alone, than anybody in the nation's capital. It's really bad.
Yes, indeed it is. It's an American tragedy.
And so it is. Listen to the words of those who are living it.
There are people here that are starving, that need jobs. People that need money more than what they're getting on welfare to live.
One day, I think and I hope and I pray that one day we don't have to be like this.
Thousand life-saving runs last year, over 1,500 already this year. They are used to coming in contact with contagious diseases, and most recently, AIDS. Yes, it is true, the rescue teams of the fire department have equipment and devices they can use to break one-to-one contact. But because of the emergency, it cannot always be used, and the danger of contagious disease is greater.
The person's unconscious, they can't give you any information. If no one's around, you don't wonder if they have it or they don't. You do what you have to do to try to save the person's life.
Just 2 weeks ago, fireman Joe Felico and his buddies rescued a victim from an auto accident. The next day, they learned the victim had AIDS.
We found out, and it scared all of us. I mean, to find out someone has a contagious disease like this, everyone was concerned.
The possibility of getting AIDS or any contagious disease is something they talk about, but regardless, there is a job to do.
The devices are there, but to use them constantly would be completely out of the question, because we can't treat everyone as being contagious.
I'm Bill McKay, News Center 8, Cleveland.
He said, "Daddy, I know why me. I looked around at school, at home, in my family. There is nobody stronger than me to take this, and God wanted me to take this."
The disease was Ewing sarcoma, cancer. 14-year-old Adele Ascari would feel his first pains in March of '84. 17 months later, his fierce battle with that cancer would be over. The young boy was a fighter, and his wishes were to continue the fight for anyone afflicted with any type of cancer.
He always wanted me and him to help people who suffer from pain. And he estimated pain as a challenge for me or him or anybody.
How are you going to remember this brave, wonderful, courageous young man?
He's going to be in my heart for the rest of my life.